Did you know that the blockchain market, the cryptocurrency market, is approaching $3 trillion? That if it was an economy, it would be approaching the top 5. That if you look at its biggest currency, Bitcoin, that in itself is at over $1 trillion. Really tremendous numbers that represent the GDP of nations. More than that, if you had invested over the last 10 years, so not a short period of time, not a speculative period, you would have outperformed the market by thousands of percent. And so we have here a new abstraction, a new platform, a fourth layer to, say, the World Wide Web. The first layer of that was the connection between documents. The second one was the connection between programs and data. The third layer was the Internet of Things, connection between things. And now we have a connection or a new layer that allows us to make exchanges of value based on a decentralized architecture. So certainly something that it is a new contribution, and we can see the impact already. We see traditional banking institutions starting to offer crypto services, and we see the crypto companies starting to offer traditional banking services. So we're certainly in for a new layer of abstraction and a new layer of opportunities. So what is blockchain? This is a question that is often confusing in its answer. It is something that often eludes even people who participate in these platforms. Well, I like to define it in a practical way. You could look at it from cryptography, you could look at it from mathematics, you could look at it from many different angles. But the definition that I will give you is one that is a practical one. I will define it in terms of 4 components. The very first one, it's that it's an open record. You can think of it as a Google Doc. Think of a spreadsheet that everybody can write to. The second one is that is a chain of transactions. So everybody can see that record, different than your bank, right? And you can follow anyone's account to determine whether the funds that, say, are being proposed are available or not. So that's the second one, the open record. The second one is the transaction. The third one is a decentralized nature when it comes to the data. So as opposed to Google, where Google holds the document, in this case, we all have a copy of that data. And the fourth one is, as you can imagine, if this is an open record, we all have a copy. How do we keep everybody honest so that you can't cheat? You can't just simply enter anything you want. And that is the consensus mechanism. So this last part originally started with proof of work. However, there are literally hundreds of consensus mechanisms. There's a great deal of creativity, there's a great deal of innovation, and some really great solutions to many business cases. If you think about volume, say the Internet of Things, where you're going to have trillions of things moving about in the world, there are blockchains that have been built from the ground up and have a consensus mechanism that recognizes this, and so it makes transactions very cheap. So as you can see there, this is a practical definition. The open record, the chain of transactions, the decentralized nature of the data, and then add to that a consensus mechanism that, depending on which blockchain you're thinking of, would be different. Now, we talked about what blockchain is, but why do we care? Why do we care about these properties? And I will call out 3 properties that I think, if we could realize any of them, would give us a tremendous addition to our digital infrastructure. These properties are 1, identity, 2, currency, 3, smart contracts. I'll start off with identity. Identity is something that is challenging. In many developing nations around the world, you still have a large population that does not have government-issued ID. It is often the same population that is unbanked. If you think about Europe and the wave after wave of refugees, these are totaling now about 30 million. These are people that by definition are people without country, without identity. So how do you meet the challenge of keeping track of healthcare records, of keeping track of education, of keeping track potentially of loans, of credit, so that they can leverage this infrastructure so that they can be provided better services? So this is one of the big challenges that we have. And if we look around our world, we would see that we have identity that is pretty fragmented as well. I have an identity in my place of work. I have a different one with an airline. I have a different one with my healthcare provider, and on and on and on. So we know that this is a challenge, and we know that issuing identities is not something that is easy to do. In most organizations, it usually takes a few days. There are requests, authorizations, approvals that are required, and a participation of multiple people typically in doing this. Now, when it comes to blockchain, here you have a tremendous difference. You can get identities on demand at the speed of a block of code executing. So, for example, I've created 1 million accounts in 1 second. Simply executed a line of instructions, about 3 lines long, and I can create 1 million accounts. Remember, within blockchain, we do not have a centralized authority. So that means I don't have to have oversight by governments, by a trusted third party like a bank. And in this case, I can quickly generate it at a very low cost, close to zero. So we have speed and we have low cost, which is a great combination. Now, the second one is we have identities, but so what? We've already argued that that's a good thing. However, in addition to that, we also have a currency. And when we put these together, that means that anyone on demand, anywhere in the world, can have an identity, and if they have the funds, they can immediately start to perform transactions. So as opposed to banking the world and adding people to banks, in this case, we can make everybody a bank. A huge difference, right? Automatically, everybody has the ability to perform banking transactions. So the third one, I talked about identity, I talked about currency, and the third one was smart contracts. Now, if we have the first two and we can add logic to that, conditional ways of executing some expressed intent, now we're talking, right? We have currencies, we have a representation of an individual, and then we have some logic that can accompany that. And so smart contracts are a great addition because we can have this in an open platform. We can have this in an open source manner. That means there's no need to pay for licenses. There's no restrictions on IP, on the intellectual property of this platform. I'd like to close by giving you a couple of examples. The first one is a modern example. No doubt you've heard of influencers. This is a curious phenomena of our modern life. Those individuals that are followed by millions on social media have the opportunity to receive funds from companies in order for them to present a product. This is something that we see now more and more and more. Now, when it comes to blockchain, or when it comes to traditional contracting, this has historically been done in an old school way. That is, you come to some agreement, you write a contract, that terms of the contract are met, then you create an invoice, you request payment from a company, and you wait those traditional couple of months. Now, this is horribly inefficient, this is old school, we all know what it is, it's a pain to do. Now, when it comes to these new influencers, given that they're in social platforms that have structured data, and that we now have the advantage of blockchain, one of the questions was, could we do this differently? And it turns out that we can. We could write a smart contract that monitors, say, the view count on a YouTube video, and that if we meet the target view count, say 100,000 or 500,000 views, then the payment is done automatically, right? That contract monitors, the value is met, the transaction can be done from one account automatically into the other with cryptocurrency. Now, you didn't have to call anyone, you didn't have to mail anything, you did not have to go to the bank and deposit your check once it was paid. It was instantaneous. And the speed and flexibility of this is something we've never really seen before. If we think about our sophistication in our world, it is tremendous. However, when it comes to the world of contracts, we still live in paper. We still see very rarely somebody get married on blockchain, somebody buy a new car on blockchain, somebody lease their apartment on blockchain. These are all transactions that could be done through smart contracts. And so we have this new opportunity to remove a tremendous amount of friction, to decrease the cost of performing business. Now, I'd like to give you one more example, and this example has to do with roadways, and this is an idea that I came up with, and if you like it and use it, please credit me. And that has to do with road coins. Imagine a new cryptocurrency, Roadcoin, that you could use as you traverse roadways. And that if there is congestion, you could use this token paired with smart contracts in communication with other cars around you to reward them from moving out of the way and letting you through. Now you could imagine as well that as you collect this road coin, someday when you're late, you have an emergency, you'd like to spend it and ask others to move out of the way to let you through. Again, you're using that road coin. Now imagine a construction company that is building or repairing some road, and it is slowing traffic. It is creating a congestion. Now they should have to also reward those that they are delaying. And you can start to see there how you could pair this into policy. You can imagine something similar with elected officials. They always make a lot of promises, and we always give them the authority, whoever it is that we elect, to be able to spend those funds. But imagine doing this in a more coordinated way, a more granular agreement. That is, if you meet the terms of your promises, say 1 of 2 of 10, then we'll give you the authority to do 3 and 4. And if you do that again, we can give you more leeway. In this way, we would have higher accountability, and we could do that voting in the same way through blockchain networks. So as you can see here, we have a new resource that really lowers the cost on things that only governments, nation states could do before. If you think about issuing an identity, this is something that requires the resources of a nation. This is something that requires coordination globally. Now you can do so on blockchain. If you think about a currency, you needed a trusted nation to stand behind this currency in order for the world to have faith on it. Now we have been able to do that through software on peer-to-peer networks. Think about the achievement of that. And then thirdly, what I talked about now when it comes to contract, being able to capture that, to have identity, to have currency, and to have logic paired with it. So as you can see, we're moving here into a new set of opportunities and a new technology that really allows us to do things in a way that we haven't been able to do it in the past. In a decentralized fashion, in a way that lowers costs, in a way that has more access than we've ever had. And because of it, it is a new set of opportunities.